What do you like in relationships?
Terrible.
Why?
If they don't end, when I get hurt, it's just.
And what hurts you? If they don't do what?
Wanted.
Finish that sentence. If they don't.
Love me enough.
Or if you don't believe they do.
Yeah.
You feel abandoned, right?
Yeah. Rejected.
Rejected. And what do you think that's about?
Have you ever felt abandoned? Like the people you trusted most just left you, physically, emotionally, or maybe both. Or maybe you felt rejected, like no matter what you do, you're never quite enough. And let's not even get started on relationships, right? That nagging feeling that you'll get hurt, that they'll leave, or that somehow it's all going to fall apart. Yeah, I've been there too. And if I'm honest, I still carry those feelings with me. That sense of being unlovable, of not being enough. It's like this quiet, lingering ache that never fully goes away. It shows up when someone doesn't text back, or when I feel like I've disappointed someone. It's not just in my head, it's in my body, in the way I tense up, in the way I hold my breath waiting for the other shoe to drop. And that's exactly what Christa's story is about. She's out there trying to save people, trying to heal others, but deep down, she's still carrying her own pain she doesn't fully understand. Let's get up close and personal with Dr. Gabor Mate as he works with Christa to uncover the root of her pain. Keep watching until the end because you'll be shocked at how Gabor pieces together this real-life story of trauma, heartbreak, and healing. I'd like to take a moment to thank Christa for letting me share her story. It's a brave and vulnerable gift, and I hope it helps us all better understand the complexities of our lives. All proceeds from this video will be donated to Mind Fuel, so they can keep creating films that explore the human experience and bring these powerful stories to light.
Yeah, no, you're fine. No, good. That's fine. That's good. How you doing, baby?
A couple minutes and we're done.
Hi, Rosie.
Try and remember.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's going on there, but I can.
Just ask any questions you want. I'll just answer them.
Okay.
Okay, I think any time, Christa, you could just open it up. We're good.
Okay. We've been my friends and I we balanced on the medicine wheel for 6 weeks, and that's been over now for a while, and I haven't really noticed significant changes in their lives, and sometimes I'm sort of at a loss of what to do about that.
Did you think that by balancing medicine wheel you're going to change their lives?
Well, no, but I thought it might offer some guidance in some way. No, I didn't really think it would change their life, but I thought it might help them. I know that it's helped other people with addictions, and it's a tool that's used in helping people balance when they're...
Well, that's just the whole thing. Like anything that we employ is just a tool.
Yeah.
But their lives are far too complicated, and there's too much pain there, and too much heaviness, and too much dysfunction for any one particular tool to change it for them. So the transformation that they need to experience requires a lot of support, a lot of context, a lot of work, a lot of insight, a lot of self-work on their part, a lot of motivation. And there's no magic formula. Not anything I do, not anything that you do. So it's not surprising to me that after 6 weeks of that particular technique, you're not noticing any major changes. That's only what I'd expect.
Yeah, I guess, and there's parts of me that have to maybe need some look like something that I need to look at in me versus what they're looking at in themselves.
Well, yeah. What is it that drew you to it? This whole project.
It was something spiritual.
You've said that a number of times. What does that mean?
I don't know. I guess it's just I've just been interested. I feel.
And how do you know it's spiritual, by the way?
Because I had a very intense feeling. I hate to use the word vision because it wasn't something that I saw. Just a very intense feeling that I was supposed to be helping to relieve people's pain, and it was something.
Okay.
It was powerful and meant something to me, and I learned about the medicine wheel, and it worked for people, and I wanted to see if it would work for street people, and I felt guided to do so. So I've been following that.
Are you feeling disappointed at the moment?
No, it just sort of, not disappointed, but just sort of confused, wondering, whether I should continue. What should I do? I won't not continue. Like, I've made friendships and there's loving connections there.
Okay.
But is there anything I can do?
What is it about that you and pain that you want to relieve it in the world? Do you know what that is?
I guess it's I don't like seeing people suffering, and I guess it's because who does? But I don't know, it's an instinctual thing that I have just felt.
Okay.
Christa, can you ask the same question of Gabor?
Well, hold it. Can we have this conversation?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, I just know that it's limited time, and I'm really curious about the same thing for your motivation.
Yeah, but
asking her.
what I'd like to do, if it's okay, is just to pursue this conversation for
Sure,
a bit. And then, I don't mind turning it around.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
I won't leave you short of time.
Okay.
Okay? Alright. Well, look, what has been your experience of pain in the world? And whose pain?
Yeah, I guess it's my own.
What about it?
What about it?
Yeah.
I don't really know where to begin with that, One particular thing, I don't know. It's
What leaps to mind?
it's sort of like an inexplicable sadness that just sort of is there.
It's inexplicable.
I can't really tell you why. Well, maybe, I don't know, my parents got divorced. Every other person has divorced parents. Like, I don't know. It's nothing I can really necessarily
Okay, alright, so
explain.
let me ask you a question then. So somebody said to you, I'm sad because, and how old were you when your parents got divorced?
3.
You were 3 years old when your parents got divorced. Okay, I want you to consider the following scenario. Somebody, a friend of yours, or somebody that you care about says to you, I got this sadness. It might be related to the fact that my parents got divorced when I was 3 years old. Would you say to them, hey, everybody else experienced divorce too? Is that what you say then? No. What might you say then?
Well, it's not your fault, I guess. Too bad that wasn't around in the 70s.
You say it's
Thank
not your
you.
fault. You say it's not your fault. In other words, who are you answering when you say it's not your fault?
Who am I answering?
Yeah. In this conversation, who suggested that it was the child's fault?
No one.
Somebody did, because you just told them
I
that.
said
You,
it.
sorry? You said it. So who's thinking that their parents' divorce was their fault?
Yeah.
I'm asking a question.
Me.
Yeah. And how old are you now?
38.
And your parents divorced when you're 3 years old. So for 35 years now, you've been carrying the burden of your parents' divorce.
I don't know about that though.
You just told me you did.
I think more that there's, like, I default to.
Hold it. You say to this other person that it's not your fault. That's one of a million things you could have said. Okay?
Yeah.
You could have just said, that's sad, isn't it? You could have said, and how did that feel to you? You could have said a million things. You said, it's not your fault. Now, given that there's only two of us in this conversation, and I don't remember suggesting that a 3-year-old child is responsible for their parents' divorce, who are you answering?
Me.
You.
But I don't feel like I've been blaming my parents for 35 years.
No, you haven't been. You've been blaming yourself.
Or
That's
I
it.
mean, I meant to say blaming.
That's the
Holy Freudian slip.
holy Freudian slip, yeah. So look,
Yeah.
now first of all, nor did it begin with the divorce. Like the sadness that you perceive in the world, it didn't begin with the divorce. Because nobody is happily married wakes up on Saturday morning and says, hey, let's get divorced, dear, it's been great. So what actually did you experience from the moment that you were born?
I can't remember.
Yes, you do. This is memory. Your tears right now are a memory.
What did I experience from the time I was born?
Yeah.
What are you asking, like, what my first...
What's it like for an infant to be in a relationship where the parents are so stressed that by the time the kid is 3, they divorce? Oh, Christa, what are you feeling right now?
Just really, 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 really sad.
Okay, that's the memory. Now you don't have to take on this point of view, but just consider it, okay? And consider that your biggest wish, your most fervent desire as a small child was to see some happiness in the world. Because both your parents were in pain. Not just you were in pain, they were in pain. And they were in pain because they didn't know how to deal with what was going on. And they wanted to love each other, and they wanted to be loved, and they didn't know how to do it. And you saw all that. Now you couldn't make sense of it, but you sensed it, being a sensitive infant and young child. And there's your unbearable sense of the overwhelming pain in the world that you need to fix.
Yeah.
And the sadness that you experience now is precisely the sadness that you experienced then. That's the memory of it. And didn't you just wish that you had a medicine wheel that could just fix it for them? It's a magic formula.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Now, if you know what it's about for me, it's the same thing. I was born as a Jewish kid to a mother whose parents were killed when I was 5 years old. They were burned in Auschwitz. And 2 months after I was born, and you read this story in my book, the Germans marched into Budapest. And my mother calls the pediatrician and says, will you please come and see my son because he's crying all the time. And the pediatrician says, of course I'll come, but I should tell you all my Jewish babies are crying. And what do I know about Nazis or Hitler or genocide? Nothing. What do I do know? What am I responding to, do you think? Why am I crying? What do you think?
The energy of your environment, the
Specifically.
stress of your parents.
Specifically my mother.
Yeah.
Because my father was away. My father was away in forced labor.
Yeah.
He wasn't even home. So then I'm around this very sad and depressed woman whose life just gets more and more difficult. Mm-hmm. And I take on her pain and I desperately want to connect with her. Mm-hmm. And she's doing her very, very best. And recently doing a shamanic ceremony, I just got how much I've been trying to fix my mother's pain on my life.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was 6 months old, my mom went into intensive care for 2 months.
Okay.
She, they didn't know what was wrong with her. They thought she was going to die. Hmm. She ended up having hypopituitarism. She wasn't her pituitary gland was. In
other words, she got stressed. I mean, the pituitary gland deals with stress. Do you know that?
No.
That's what it does. There's the HPA axis in the brain, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. The emotional centers in the brain send a message to the hypothalamus, which sends a message to the pituitary, which sends a message to the adrenal, and then you have the stress hormones. So the pituitary is part of the stress response mechanism. Your mother was way overstressed, so the pituitary failed. And that didn't happen overnight. In other words, probably it was like that from the moment you were conceived. And you experienced all that in her uterus. And then since your birth, And then for 2 months you don't see her. And how old were you then?
6 months.
Okay, now how does a 6-month-old infant experience the absence of the mother?
I don't know.
Yeah? What do you like in relationships?
Terrible.
Why?
I just, if they don't end, when I get hurt, it's just.
And what hurts you? If they don't do what?
Not being wanted.
Finish that sentence. If they don't.
Love me enough.
Or if you don't believe they do.
Yeah.
You feel abandoned, right?
Yeah. Rejected.
Rejected. And what do you think that's about? How about it's a memory of being 6 months old and your mother abandons you? My mother gave me to a total stranger when I was 9 months.
Yeah.
So 11 months. In order to save my life. Because she couldn't have kept me alive. So there's a sense of abandonment. Yeah. The infant doesn't know what's happening. You don't know that your mother's ill and loves you very much, but she needs to go into intensive care to save her life. All your experience is the abandonment, which then gets programmed into your brain. Well, that's the experience of every addicted person in the street. Because
what's happening in the brain?
Those early experiences get programmed in the brain in the form of what's called implicit memory. There's no recall. See, because the structures in the brain that encode recall memory don't develop till you're a year and a half or older. So there's no recall for any of those incidents. See, if when one of your partners looks the wrong way at you, and if you could say to yourself, boy, this reminds me of when my mother disappeared for 2 months, I feel just as abandoned now, you'd be okay. Because you know that it's not the same experience. But you don't know that. Because there's no recall. There's just the emotional memory, which is the implicit memory, programmed in your brain. So when somebody doesn't call you back, or doesn't show up for the date, or they don't say what they don't do what they said they were going to do, boom, you're 6 months old again, being abandoned all over again, because that's the memory programmed in your brain, triggered by the present experience. So that's the first thing that happens, is that our sense of ourselves and what the world looks like and how the world relates to us is all programmed by the template of what happens early in the form of memory circuits in the brain and the body, because it's not just in the brain, it's in the whole body. Mm-hmm. But we don't know that because there's no recall. That's the first thing that happens. The second thing that happens is that the stress regulation circuits that are supposed to be able to calm us down don't develop properly. So then we have to soothe ourselves externally by addictions or whatever we take on. And then other brain circuits, important brain circuits in the case of the addict, the circuits of opiate, pain relief, and dopamine incentive and motivation, they don't develop either, because for their development you need a non-stressed, emotionally available parenting caregiver. Physiologically, that's what the infant's brain needs. And it's not a matter of blaming your parents for the divorce. It's a matter of recognizing the impact of that on you. It's not, no, they're not to be blamed. They did their best. They had their own stuff. They were programmed by their own childhoods. The Swiss psychotherapist Alice Miller wrote a book called The Drama of the Gifted Child. But the German title of the book was Prisoners of Childhood. Meaning that until we get it, and until we're liberated, we're all prisoners of what happened to our childhood. Which is not to blame anybody. It's multi-generational. Mm-hmm. Your parents didn't create their stresses any more than my mother created the Second World War. So it's certainly not blaming the parents, but it's also not blaming yourself. It's just recognizing what happened, that's all.
I wonder how many addicts actually understand that.
Well, how about, did you understand it before this conversation?
Somewhat, but it still is like really emotionally moving, you know.
Yeah. And you didn't totally get it either.
Because I didn't blame. It wasn't like I was blaming my parents for the divorce or for any of those things that happened. But I never could understand my depression.
Yeah, or the pain. That's what I'm talking about. The so-called inexplicable sorrow that you had.
Yeah.
Is far from inexplicable. In fact, it's only natural given your history. But you, an educated and interested and engaged individual, didn't quite get that. How would you until somebody explains it to you?
Yeah.
So how would the addict understand it?
They don't.
And the medical doctors don't learn this stuff. And the teachers and the psychologists don't learn this stuff. So who would speak to them?
It breaks my heart to think about that, you know, because quite often I think of Danelle or any of the ones that I've bonded with, and they beat themselves up so much.
Who else do you know that beats themselves up?
Yeah. But I want to talk about them too.
Yeah, but you are talking about them. Look, the reason it breaks your heart is because you're still beating yourself up.
Why am I doing this again? No, right away.
Well,
I don't
you're doing this because you have to find something out.
Yeah.
You have to explore something and investigate something.
Yeah.
So once you no longer beat yourself up, then it won't break up your heart anymore because you just see the possibility.
Right.
The reason you breaks your heart because you don't yet see the possibility of not beating yourself up. Once you see it for yourself, you'll see it for them.
Yeah.
But you see, you wonder why your medicine wheel didn't work. You can only lead people as far as you've come yourself. A guide can only take people as far as he's explored or she's explored the territory for themselves. So it's not just a question of love and good intention, it's also a question of, awareness and insight. And that takes some work to get there.
Yeah.
Nor is it that difficult. But it needs to happen. Meanwhile, you're giving them a great gift. Just in your loving presence. That's not something they've had too often in their lives.
No. And seeds, that's what I always say, seeds were planted. It wasn't all for naught.
No. No, of course not.
Seeds
are planted, but seeds are like anything else. They need the right environment.
Yeah.
There's not enough to plant seeds. You have to water them. The sunshine has to come at the right time, but not too much of it. So seeds planted in the consciousness are the same way.
Mm-hmm.
The Buddhists talk about the store consciousness, where all the seeds are planted.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a question of what conditions, and again, our society just doesn't provide the right conditions.
If you were me, what would your next step be? In relations.
I'd work at healing yourself. So that when you engage in the work, you do it from a place of possibility and awareness of healing. Not from a place of a broken-hearted despondence over their fate. And not by being overwhelmed by their pain.
There's a lot of guilt too. Like if I don't see them, like if I go for a period of time without visiting or seeing them, I think about them every day, all of them.
Yeah. And what do you think that's about? That's about that sense of responsibility that you developed almost from the very beginning of your life because of the unhappiness of the adults around you. See, it's not that there isn't pain in the world. And you could work 24/7, 7 days a week for the rest of your life. And it would only still be a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
And I could do the same thing. So there's a legitimate reason to be concerned and to be engaged. But the guilt, that's something different. That doesn't empower you.
The guilt is the worst.
Yeah. Well, the guilt, I could give you a whole lecture on guilt. Well, it's a mechanism the child develops to keep her from establishing her own needs and to keep her mind on the parents' needs. When I think about myself, I'm selfish. When I do anything for myself, I'm selfish. When I say no, I'm selfish. What does that do for the child? It keeps her connected to the parents. In other words, it maintains the most important dynamic in her life, which is the relationship with the parent. So it's a positive thing. Not in itself, it's not positive, but in the context in which it develops, it plays a positive role. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
No. But the guilt doesn't know any better. The guilt has no idea that you're 38 years old and you got a life to lead on your own now.
Yeah.
It's just a mechanism. So every time you're not on duty, the guilt kicks in. hey, you're forgetting you know. It doesn't know that you don't need it anymore. So what you have to need to do is to say hello to the guilt. Oh, there you are again. Hi. But you have to listen to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You should really come and do one of my workshops.
Yeah, I should.
I say should. You know, you get a lot of it.
At Hollyhock.
Hollyhock or one of the ones I work with, where they work with ayahuasca, actually, that'd be fantastic for you.
Okay.
I'll be doing them in the fall again.
Do you work with, or is it, could I, what my instant question is, can I bring my buddies?
But, bring wherever you want.
Yeah. No, I would just, maybe for Eddie or...
Oh, you mean your addicted buddies?
Yeah.
You'll notice that question in you. Notice the impulse right away.
That's what I'm doing.
I know you noticed.
I just did that right away. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, can I bring to
Well, yeah. See how automatic it is for you. So just notice just how compulsive and
It's like I'm putting it onto them.
yeah.
They're me.
Yeah. You got it.
Sorry.
You're sorry because
I don't know, because I'm crying.
you're not supposed to cry.
I don't know, the other thing I'm thinking right now is I just really, really, really love them.
What's that?
I really love them. Like,
Sure.
all of them.
Sure you do.
It's just this...
Well, they're very vulnerable and when you get to know them, very open-hearted people, are they not?
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. They've all taught me stuff. They've all been there for me. It just, you know?
Yeah.
I was dating this guy this summer and he, I don't know, he just wasn't being good, you know? Classic. He explained it. They don't even know me.
Not only that, you would choose those kind of people anyway.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, Karen.
And Karen said to me, honey, you just gotta let him go. You just gotta let him go. And she's so cute, like when she talks, you know?
Yeah.
He's just gonna hurt you more.
Huh.
There's other fish in the sea. There's jackfish. There's salmon. There's whitefish. And she just went on and on. I was just laughing my head off at her, you know? And now every time I have an interaction with a guy, because it happens every time. It just doesn't click or doesn't work. And it's just like, you gotta let him go, because he's just gonna hurt you more. And it's her words that come in my head.
There's a wonderful book you need to read called Getting the Love You Want by a man called Harville Hendricks. It's about how we recreate in our adult relationships the very template that we experienced as children. Mm-hmm. Until we get it, we just do it compulsively.
Yeah.
I mean, my wife and I did that for many years. It doesn't mean it can't be worked out.
Yeah, I've heard that before. It doesn't make sense until you figure it out, until it comes clear.
Yeah, but you know, there's ways to work at making it clear, or you can just carry on unconsciously, hoping that at some point you figure it out.
Yeah.
I say, Christa, important about, maybe that's too big of a topic.
Well, I'm not sure I ask as a good example because there's nothing addictive about it. You don't want more, you want less.
Right.
And it makes you throw up, and it's totally unpleasant. So it's not anything anybody would crave. Although it's true, the experience can be addictive. If somebody has no purpose or no meaning in their life, then they can make the ayahuasca ceremony to their purpose and their meaning. So it's not that the drug is addictive; it's that the experience can be addictive. Like any experience can be addictive, but it's not a great example. But the point you're making, that everybody's addicted to something, and that's totally valid.
Yeah, we should touch on that.
Sure.
Because and the mirror where the discrimination comes from.
Yeah, sure. I can.
The mirror out. Yeah.
Sure.
Is that, and that's it then? Hey.
Yeah, sure. We're rolling.
I
Go
don't
ahead,
know.
Christa.
Are we rolling? I just remember having a conversation with Danelda one day, and there's just her insight just amazes me at times, and it's not really anything that anyone else wouldn't have noticed about me. But we were having a conversation, just, you know, we have deep conversations about things, and I said to her, you know, I've been looking for an elixir. I kept calling it, like it was that I wanted, like about homelessness, and that the answers would come from inside to what the people needed in order to get out of the places that they're in. And I said to her, you know, but I think maybe the elixir is just that I need to point the finger back at myself. And she's just like, she just started laughing. She's like, of course you do. I've known that the whole time. She's like, you haven't had a relationship since I've met you. You know, and it just came out.
It surprised you?
Yeah.
That they're being observed that carefully and that acutely. Well, they do that. They can tell me about me almost any time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And insightful.
Yeah.
It, like so many different occasions. She just has an angle on things. You know, things aren't quite going right. She's the first to remind me, just get out of the way.
Well, look, she's been on the block a few times.
She sure has. I'll never forget Stan, our one that passed away this last fall. He was talking to me about her, and he said, you know, don't make no mistake. She's the toughest little bitch on the street, but she's 4'7". She weighed 80 pounds when she was out there. She's about 90 pounds now. She's got a walker. She's just a tiny, tiny, tiny little woman. Like just. Again, my heart goes out because she should not have been out there for 8 years, going through what she's going through. You know, night terrors, suffering. Like her childhood's just ritual abuse, terrible. You know, one thing she said to me, I'll never forget either, is she's like, it's one thing to be abused and neglected by your father, but it's quite another for that to be the same thing to happen with your mother. And it's just like words that have just stuck, but she is.
And why do you suppose those words stuck?
Yeah. It's one thing to be abused by your father, but to be abused by your mother.
Or neglected.
Yeah. I think what her actual the word she used was rejected.
Okay.
By your father, and then to be rejected by your mother.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's the insight that she has, and it seems to me that from my experience, she actually named. That came up with the name. Well, the conversation I had with her came the name Us and Them for this film came from her because
S&M?
Not S&M, Us and Them.
Us and Them. Sorry.
Sorry.
What weird thing are we talking about now?
It's been sexual innuendos all day. Okay? No, Us and Them because there's.
Well, yeah, and then
the us and them.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing in our society, and the reason is us and them is because there's no us and them, and so people don't want to see that. See, it would take a lot of self-reflection, and you can see how difficult that can be for people to recognize that there's no them and there's no us. There's just us. That takes a lot for people to get there. It's a lot more comfortable to think that there's us and them. Because it means that there's painful places inside of ourselves we don't have to go to. I mean, this society is so full of pain. I speak all over the place. And it doesn't matter whether I speak to teachers or doctors or people who are overweight or parents. The tears are everywhere. Now, for people to actually recognize that and to see that the major difference in themselves and the homeless or the addicted or the mentally ill is simply that these latter ones have suffered more and have had fewer resources to support them. That would take a huge transformation of consciousness. It's much easier to be spiritual than to be emotionally authentic, as you know. So that it's much easier, therefore, to believe that on a deeper level, not on a deeper level, at least if you're doing the spiritual work, you recognize that people are all the same. If you do the emotional work, you recognize that people are all the same. But those are both difficult tasks. To do genuine spiritual work is difficult. To do genuine emotional work is very difficult. And it's easier, therefore, to hold on to a kind of self-image. And that's why there's the us and them. So that all the projections that people throw on other people, the negative judgments, it's really about them. But that takes a lot to recognize that. And then there's politicians who profit off it. They believe it in the first place. They're victims of it themselves. But then they exacerbate it. Then they run elections on magnifying people's fears. And then you need a strong politician like me, a strong leader, to protect you from these druggies. Everybody respects the guy who's a strong leader. What does a strong leader mean? It means that you throw the most vulnerable people in jail. And that's what this government is doing right now. It's building more jails. That means that they're strong. And why do they need to be strong? Because people are afraid. And what are they afraid of? They're afraid of themselves. And so then we create the whole us and them scenario. And this is done whether it's foreign politics or internal politics, So then, the most abused segments of the population, for example, the First Nations population in this country, who make up maybe 2% of the population, in Manitoba they make up 50-60% of the prison population. Federally, they make up a large percentage, large minority of the prison population. In the downtown east side, 30% of my clients are First Nations people. Why? Because they're the most abused segment of the Canadian population. Abused historically, abused economically, abused politically, and abused sexually. By government-enforced institutions for generations upon generation. And then we make them the enemy? And we build jails for them?
It's backwards.
It's inverted. It's perverted and it's inverted. And it's diverted too, because it diverts our attention from what's really going on.
I'll never forget the day I got a flyer in my mailbox. It was a vote Conservative. Must have been the last election.
It was.
And the platform was, we'll lock up the junkies and put them in rehab. There was 3 things they were going to do.
No, the question was, which leader do you trust?
Yes.
To get the druggies off the street or into jail or rehab, where they belong. Off our streets where they belong. There's our streets and they belong somewhere else.
How is that okay? Like, I remember looking at that and feeling cold, like just going completely.
Well, what do you notice when you look in the Prime Minister's eyes?
I'm just thinking about that picture. He's just. They just seem fake to me.
Well,
there's false.
Think of his eyes. What do you see there?
I don't know, like a fakeness and also a vulnerability. Something there too. It's just not. Something that's not real.
Okay. Well, a lot of people see a coldness there. A kind of a mask.
Yeah.
Something hidden, just as you said. Now, what is he hiding? He's hiding his own pain. Who's he hiding it from? Himself. That guy's been hurt. He doesn't know it. He won't admit it. He was vulnerable and he got hurt. Therefore, he has to be powerful and the bully. He's got to be tough. And he hates his vulnerability so much that he attacks vulnerability in other people. Which is why, under these kind of governments, it's the most helpless people that get the shortest shrift. But that's how it works.
Yeah, people need to understand this and get out and vote in a different way, though, because it's sick what's happening to the people who are in pain and suffering the most and are the most marginalized in our world, you can't just lock them up and put them in rehab. You can't. The rehab's not going to work unless you want to be there, and you can't just put people in jail.
Well, you can't, but you can.
I guess you can. Can you? For just doing
the Americans have 5% of the world's population, but they have 25% of the world's jail population. Now with the economic crisis, you know what's happening? They're letting people go because they can't afford to keep them in jail anymore.
Of course.
In California, in many jails, there's no gyms anymore. People can't work out anymore. Why? Because the gyms are being made into dormitories with bunk beds because their jails are overflowing. In the California state budget, they spend more money on jails than they do on higher education. You can do it. What are the consequences?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the world we live in, and that's why it's so difficult for you with your medicine wheel, because the context to water those seeds and to give it the sunshine, to allow those plants of human transformation and development and love and self-confidence to grow. The context is not there.
Doesn't exist.
No. Which doesn't mean that you don't do the work. It just means you don't take it on personally when you don't succeed on that level.
Yeah.
And you don't confuse your guilt about your parents' divorce with the failure of your patients or your clients to achieve some transformation.
It's so funny. I don't even know. They're not my patients. They're just at this point in time. They're just my friends.
I know, but,
I know what you mean.
I'm talking about how you relate to them emotionally.
Yeah. No. Just that emotional connection is just so.
I'm not just talking about that. I'm talking about the burden that you take on. So you can be there without taking on a burden.
Yeah.
If you're there with a burden, you're helping them less. So again, to go back to the beginning, that burden is yours. You got to put it down.
Yeah, the guilt is my thing.
Yeah, it's totally yours.
They don't care. Like, I mean, they like to see me when they see me, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Or it does.
Well, even if it does,
Or it does. Like,
it's still no reason to feel guilty.
Yeah. Yeah. I just don't. There's just. It amazes me that even the people that are making the protocol in our governments, if that is what it is, with the Conservative government and Stephen Harper, but all you have to do is take a little look deeper into the average person that's living on the street to see that it is suffering.
But he's never done that. He's never talked to a homeless person his whole life. He's never asked his childhood history. He's never looked into their eyes. He's never slept in their beds. I mean, he's not done any of those things.
It's just crazy. It's just crazy.
We live in a crazy world.
We do live in a crazy world.
All right, let's take a step back and think about Christa's story for a second. Can you relate to her? That lingering sadness she talks about? The feeling that you've been carrying something heavy your whole life, but you can't quite put your finger on why? Because honestly, I can. I am that pain inside me. It's not just a memory, it's alive in my body, my thoughts, the way I react to people. It shows up in moments that don't even seem connected to anything, like when someone doesn't call back, or when things feel just slightly off. It's like this invisible thread tying everything together, and no matter how much I try to cut it, it's still there, still lingering, still pulling. And that's the heartbreaking part, isn't it? Because we all want to believe we've moved on, that the past is the past, but it's not. It's alive in us, in the way we love, the way we work, even the way we see ourselves. Christa's story isn't unique. It's a reflection of something so many of us feel but are too scared to admit. That the pain we see in others is often the same pain we're avoiding in ourselves. It's a sad reality. But maybe it's also a starting point. Because if we can admit it, if we can face it, maybe that's where healing begins. What about you? Can you see pieces of Christa's story in your own? Or is there something you've buried so deep that even thinking about it feels too much? Honestly, It's both overwhelming and hopeful. Overwhelming because the problems, addiction, trauma, systemic injustice are so massive. Hopeful because conversations like this show that people are paying attention, asking the hard questions, and trying to do better. Even if it's messy and imperfect, it's a start. And that counts for something. There are some beautiful, heartbreaking exchanges here. Christa talking about her friends, her love for them, their resilience despite everything they've endured. Like the woman with the walker who survived 8 years on the streets. Or the friend who tells her to let the bad relationships go, reminding her she deserves better. It's these small, intimate connections that make all the difference, even if they don't fix anything. Also, the imagery of planting seeds really stuck with me. It's such a hopeful yet realistic metaphor. You can plant seeds of love, healing, or change, but the environment has to nurture them. And if society keeps creating barren, hostile conditions for growth, those seeds don't stand a chance. But that doesn't mean we stop planting them, you know? Because sometimes against all odds, they sprout. The us and them concept hit hard. Like how we separate ourselves from the homeless, the addicts, the other. It's such a defense mechanism, right? We make it about them to avoid dealing with our own pain, our own brokenness. Gabor really lays it out here. The government, politicians, they thrive on this division. And the people at the bottom? They're just casualties of a system that was never built to support them in the first place. The stats he drops are damning. How Indigenous folks are disproportionately in prison or living in poverty. How addiction stems from trauma that's never addressed. How our society literally spends more on locking people up than on helping them heal. It's infuriating, and it feels so overwhelming. Like, where do you even start when the whole system is rigged to perpetuate pain and punishment? This whole thing seems to boil down to two intertwined truths. 1. Healing is deeply personal but never happens in isolation. Like, Christa can't fix her friends until she starts addressing her own stuff. But at the same time, their healing isn't just about personal choices. It's about the environments they're in, the trauma they've lived through, and the systems stacked against them. 2. Society won't change until we stop pretending there's an us and a them. We're all carrying pain. Some people's wounds are just more visible. The more we distance ourselves from that reality, the more harm we perpetuate on others and on ourselves. Thank you for joining us on this deeply moving journey into Christa's story and the wisdom of Dr. Gabor Mate. If this conversation touched you, if it made you reflect on your own experiences, or helped you understand someone else's pain a little better, know that you've taken the first step toward greater compassion and healing. We're all carrying something, but by sharing stories like this, we can begin to lift each other up, one step at a time. Remember, healing doesn't happen in isolation. It happens when we come together, learn, and grow. If you found this video valuable, don't forget to comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts or stories. Please like this video to show your support, and subscribe to Inside Serene, your mental fitness channel, for more conversations that inspire growth, understanding, and transformation. Together, let's keep building a world where healing is possible for everyone.